Correction for Children's Church. Let's rise and turn to page 829 in your red pew Bible as we read Mark 15:27 to 34 this morning. Starting back where we started before, but we were in Luke. Now we're in Mark 15. Jesus is on the cross. Verse 27, and with him they crucified two bandits, one to his right and one to his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others, but he can't even save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. And when it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" You may be seated. So far, up to this point, we're going through the words that Jesus spoke on the cross. And so far, he has been completely 100% focused on everyone else. First prayer was, "Father, forgive them, for they don't even get it. They don't know what's going on here." Second one was for one of those bandits that was hanging with him. The one who maybe his whole life was flashing before his eyes and he realized that he had messed it all up. And his request of Jesus was, "Jesus, hold me close." And remember Jesus' words, "This day you will be with me in paradise." And so Jesus was, as he is suffering, as he was brutally beaten and tortured, because as we've said before, crucifixion is the most cruel and horrifying punishment. It's actually literally not meant to kill you. It's meant to have you hang there in torture for as long as humanly possible until your body just quits. You didn't actually die from that. It wasn't meant to kill you. It was meant to completely destroy you. And in this case, the leaders of the church at the time, they stepped it up. He got more ridicule than anyone ever did because they wanted to completely wipe Jesus and all of his followers off the face of the earth. And while he endured all the punishment beforehand, the cruel and unusual punishment of the cross itself, the taunting, the mocking, 100% Jesus is thinking of everyone else. "I forgive you all." And the man that came and said, "Jesus, hold me close," Jesus said, yes, today you will be with me in the King's garden. You will be with me in absolute paradise, unlike any place you could ever ask, hope, or imagine. See, he was thinking fully for himself. Now, this one, we think, Now Jesus turns towards himself, and the words he's speaking are about his own pain and suffering. But as we take a closer look, we might see something a little different. This entire time, his mind was lifted above himself. He was serene and calm enough through the beatings he took before, through the torture of hanging on the cross, through the mocking, through the absolute humiliation. His mind wasn't on himself. He was serene and calm enough to think and pray and plan for the sake of others. And these words are so often misunderstood, thinking that this is Jesus crying out on his own behalf. But as we dig a little bit deeper, we find out something completely different. And we are reminded these words from Mr. Moody. The Bible was not given for our information, but for our transformation. These aren't just words on a page. These aren't just words to fill our heads with. What happened in these words happened. And this is not just a narrative story to tell us so we can remember. These words are meant to enter into our brain and flow into our heart and transform our heart, to remake it and remold it so that we become more and more like the one who suffered for us. I've said before, maybe no pastor should ever say this, I don't really like Easter. I'm not going to lie. It's so hard for me because it's so horribly brutal and unjust and terrible and yet wonderful at the same time. It messes with my brain. And so I'm so conflicted. And I'm going to be honest, also tomorrow is the anniversary of my dad going home and my dad being healed, unlike how I wanted him to be healed. And his funeral was on a Palm Sunday. And so Easter was always hard, but then 2017, Easter got that much harder because it's brutal and wonderful all at the same time, and I can't really reconcile that. So I live in this turmoil in Easter, and I think to some degree we probably should, because it is turmoil, and yet it's wonderful. And I just can't wrap my brain around it. And this, like this right here, to know the Easter story is one thing, but to know the Easter story is its purpose. To change us. So that as we know it, as we see it, as we experience it, it changes us. If it doesn't change you, if this whole season doesn't mess with your brain a little bit, I'm going to challenge you to pay closer attention to what it's all about. Because yes, it is wonderful. But it's not right. It's not okay that it had to happen this way. And yet I'm so thankful that it did, so I don't have to experience that. See, the religious leaders, out of their jealousy, pride, self-preservation, they were motivated out of darkness. There was darkness in that realm around Jesus at the cross. In the hearts of the people, then there was darkness that was being poured out onto him. In our hearts now, there is darkness that's being poured out onto him on the cross. All the darkness for all humanity, for all time, was being poured out on him. And that darkness actually becomes a tangible darkness in that moment. So we jump into this. I'm going to skip past where we've been before and jump right into this. Verse 33. After all that, at noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. We have no explanation for this. Some people say, well, it was just an eclipse. But if you look at the schedule, the scientific schedule of eclipses, this wasn't a scheduled eclipse. You know, science can explain, we can predict, oh, the next one's going to happen on this day. You take that, you can go in, reverse. This is not a scheduled scientific, well, it was just, the irony of the eclipse on that day. This is one that was not explainable by the scientific eclipse schedule. This was its own thing. And we know on a spiritual level what this means. You could wipe this away and go, well, eclipses happen. They don't just randomly happen out of the blue. There's a whole understanding of the Earth's rotation and the universe and how it functions, and so we can predict. This doesn't fit that. See, darkness is a symbol of God's judgment. Darkness is a symbol of the absence of God. Darkness is a symbol of evil. The absence of light is the absence of God. The absence of God is the absence of good. And so in this moment, when Jesus is hanging on this cross, taking the sin and the suffering for all humanity, for all mankind, there is a point where God needs to step away. Because in order for Jesus to be the atoning sacrifice for our sin, God and sin cannot be present together. And so in order for Jesus to bear that sin, God had to step away. And not only did God in the spiritual realm step away from Jesus and step away to some degree from humanity in that moment, you could see it. There is historical evidence of this, and people have said it was darker than the darkest night. Like, it wasn't just dark. Oh, it got a little cloudy. Clouds covered the sun. No, it was dark. It was the absence of light. Now, I don't know if that means like people couldn't even, like you go like this and like I can't even see my hand. Like, was it that dark that people were, I don't dare move. But it was dark. It wasn't just cloudy. It wasn't just night. It was darker than the darkest night. The complete absence of good. The absence of God in this moment. But it was also the fulfillment of a prophecy. We go to Amos 8. See, Amos chapters 7 through 9 is visions of judgment and restoration. It's given this timeline and this understanding of judgment to restoration, the whole process of redemption, from existing in the darkness to coming into God's glorious light, that whole process of redemption, being made new, old sinful darkness being brought into the light and being renewed and refreshed. That's Amos 7 through 9, is God sharing there is a restoration, there is a redemption coming. In Amos 8 verse 9 it says, "In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight." So in the midst of this prophecy from Amos, from the Old Testament, saying there is a process, you're going to see it, you're going to experience the old and the new, and there is a process of going from darkness into light, and that can be a painful process of growth from darkness into light. You are going to see it. It is coming. God's redemption is on the horizon. It's here. It may not be here right now, but it's coming. And you will see it. Amos says you will know that the old will be gone and the new is emerging when I make the sun disappear at noon. And so any scholar, anybody who knew their Bible prophecy, in that moment, Jesus is hanging on the cross and he's praying for everyone out there, and he's praying for the one hanging next to him, and he's thinking only for himself, this man who they say is the King of the Jews and is showing every shred of his character and his integrity. And then all of a sudden, the sun goes away at noon and the earth is darkened in broad daylight. People who knew didn't just go, "Oh, that's weird." People who knew probably went, "Oh, for the love of all that is good, what have we done?" He really is who he says he is. And I can imagine the panic and the fear and the worry in that moment of what is going on. And at the same time, this awkward sense of hope that we feel in this dark season, this dark, wonderful season of Easter. The transition from judgment to restoration must be complete darkness. They often say the night is darkest just before dawn. For all humanity, for all time, it was darker than the darkest night before hope emerges, and ironically, the sun rises on the horizon. So at noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. This is the fulfillment of the transition that God foretold in Amos, said, this is it. It is coming now. Redemption is here. Hope is yours to have. You don't see it right now because it's real dark. But you know the sun is going to rise on this darkest of dark nights. And at 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? So after 3 hours of complete darkness, who knows what the murmurings were? Who knows what was being spoken, if anything was being spoken, or if everyone was like holding their breath for 3 hours wondering what is going to happen next? How much fear, panic there was. But apparently Jesus just took it. He just took the complete darkness, the complete lack of the presence of God in him, around him, through him in that moment. And then he cries this, my God, why have you forsaken me? So Jesus' words reflect not only the darkness of the horrific experience that he was enduring, but also the darkness in those surrounding him at the cross. See, we look at this at first glance and we go, okay, he is suffering and he's crying out on his own behalf. This is a cry out of that darkness of there's so much darkness all around. There's darkness that he's having to endure. There's darkness in the people around him. There's literal darkness all around them. And it's been that way for hours. And now Jesus is saying, God, why? Why are you doing this? Where are you? Have you ever been there? All hope, love, joy, peace, kindness. You feel like it's gone. You can't find it. You ever been in that place where you say, maybe you say it out loud, where are you, God? Where are you in this? I don't feel you. Like, what are you doing? I'm following you and I'm asking for your help. And we need you, but where are you in this moment right now? I have, in my life, I have felt as though God has been absent. And I'm not going to lie, it happens more than I want to admit. As a pastor, I probably shouldn't say that, but as your pastor, you get me. You get the true, honest me. I don't flower anything up. And the crazy thing, as I've said before, one of my mentors used to always say, I wonder what will be happening in the life of the church when we get to this message. And as soon as I became a pastor, I realized that's not what we say at the Eliason house. We say, what is going to be happening in the life of the Eliason clan when we get to this message? So I've joked with a few people. I'm looking for the passage of the Bible that talks about how life is cupcakes and teddy bears and chocolate chip cookies with a big glass of milk to dip them in. So I'll preach a 3-month series on that one. But I'm not going to lie. Like in the last week or two, I've prayed that, God, where are you? Where are you in this? You say that you will never leave us and you will never forsake us. And I know that you are who you say you are. And you're doing what you say you're going to do. But I don't feel you. I don't see you. I don't see you working. I actually feel like the darkness is winning right now. And so where are you, God? And so, of course, we get to this week. Like, oh, okay. Should have picked a different passage to preach on this Easter. Because Easter's hard enough for me. And then we get to this, but then I'm reminded. See, sometimes I feel like God is absent. Because I don't see his beautiful hand making all things good and wonderful. As I don't see it. I don't feel it. But for us to be forgiven and redeemed, God had to break the line of perfect communion with Jesus. See, the thing is, oftentimes when I find myself in trouble, it's because I've left God's side. Sometimes I'm like, God, hold on a second. I want to go do this thing. Just give me a second. And I go and I do something on my own. And oftentimes when trouble comes, it's because I've chosen to leave God's side. See, the thing about Jesus, Jesus never left. Jesus, what made him so amazing as, one of the many reasons, he was fully human, he was fully God. I don't get how you can be fully both. It doesn't make sense to me, but he's God, so he understands. But the fully human aspect of Jesus was he always lived in perfect union with God. He never said, God, hold on a second, let me do this thing. Jesus was always united with God. This was his first experience when God had to separate himself from Jesus. So sometimes I feel like God is absent. And even when I feel like I am living right where he's calling me to live, I feel like, God, what are you doing? Where are you in this? He's right here. I feel like he's absent. Jesus experienced his absence. Jesus he actually experienced the absence of God. And so when I begin to feel like, God, where are you? I don't see you working. I don't see you making all things new. I don't see the full life that you offer. All I see is, in this world you will have trouble. I'm waiting on but take heart, because I've overcome. I'm waiting on that part. So I feel it, but Jesus fully experienced it. So if I ever feel like God isn't with me, what I know is that Jesus actually experienced that. And I know that God promises to never leave me, never forsake me. God promises to never leave you, never forsake you. And sometimes we can feel like he's not there, but he is. And the one we follow, the one we serve, actually experienced what it was like for all good to be gone. All hope, all grace, all mercy, all love, all joy, all peace was pulled from Christ. He experienced that so we never have to. See, he understands more than we can ever realize what it's like because he experienced it. And not only did he experience that, he chose to experience it so we don't have to. All the while, he continues to be our example. See, deep within, even though God literally was absent, Jesus knew that God didn't abandon him. And these words that he speaks, my God, why have you forsaken me? It seems like now we've made the shift. That, okay, Jesus stopped thinking about everyone else, and now he's crying out for himself. But if we understand, there was a psalm, and Becca read it. That psalm was a very well-known worship song in that day and age. Kind of like on the lines of, like if I was to start singing the first line of Amazing Grace, 90% of you in this room could finish the song, right? You don't need the words in front of you. We start singing Amazing Grace, and most people who have been around church for a while, we know every single word. Very popular worship song. Or, move it up a generation and say, Awesome God. Like 30 years ago called, they want their favorite worship song back. Okay? We start singing the first line of Awesome God, and most of us could probably finish the whole song without having to open a book or look at a screen. Now, if we go back to Psalm 22, that Becca read earlier, Psalm 22 starts, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, I don't know what it's like to be on the cross, but I can imagine Jesus beaten as he was. I don't know if he had the strength or lung capacity to sing a song. But I imagine pulls himself up, and he doesn't just say, "My God, God, why did you abandon me?" He pulled himself up, and he did his best to choke out the first stanza of that song. My God, why have you forsaken me?" And everyone in that place started singing in their head the rest of this psalm because it was like Amazing Grace. You start singing that first line of Amazing Grace, and then you just go silent. Most of you will start, you'll continue the song. And in this powerful moment, world goes dark. It's 3:00. Then Jesus lifts himself up and says the first line of a song and then drops himself back down. Dead silence. Everyone's singing this song. Maybe out loud. Most of them at least in their head. Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. See, this psalm starts in angst, starts in turmoil, but then slowly begins to shift to praise. Starts by saying, God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me? I don't feel you by day. I can't rest at night. Where are you? But then as we work through this song, we get later. And the song ends with, I will declare your name to my people in the assembly. I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him. Revere him, all you descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or scorned. He's not left the suffering of the afflicted one. He's not hidden his face from us. But he has listened to the cry for help. So this song starts in agony, in despair, in darkness. And we can almost see Amos chapters 7 through 9 being revealed through the song. It starts in the darkness, but slowly as you sing this song, it starts in agony and it begins to shift from darkness and hopelessness into praise and glory be the God that listens. He is not absent. He has never left us. He's never forsaken us. See, some might think that, well, that's just it's just a coincidence that Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? I don't think anything that Jesus did was coincidence. See, before all this, Jesus knew what he was going to experience. In his mind, he knew that he was going to bear the guilt and the shame for all sin, for all humanity, for all time. He probably had no idea how horrible it would be, but he knew what his mission was. And he was sold out on that mission. So he knew why he was there. I don't think it just so happened, all of a sudden, the character and integrity and all that Jesus was in this moment, I don't think he abandoned all that and then said, God, where are you? Why did you do this to me? I don't think that's who Jesus is. The Jesus that I know, while facing the agony that he was experiencing, in all the pain and the darkness and the absence of God, he still sang a song of, even in my darkness, God, I will praise you. Even in my suffering, God, you are the one who brings hope. Even in my pain and agony, God, I know that you are with me. I know that you will never leave me. You will never forsake me. I know that you hear my cry. With his last words, with all of his last words, he is speaking life and bringing hope. Father, I forgive them. They don't even get it. You'll be with me in paradise. And don't forget, even in your darkest hour, God is still there. He's still with you. He hears you. Praise his name. With his final words, he's offering hope. See, Jesus has the full assurance of God's presence. See, Jesus actually didn't have the presence of God, but he was still assured in the presence of God. He experienced it so we don't have to. Jesus had the utmost confidence that God is present and he never leaves. Even though he did for Jesus, Jesus knew my mission here is to experience that darkness so nobody else ever has to ever again. And so don't forget, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted. He's not hidden his face from you. He is listening. He is with you. And he will never leave you or he will never forsake you. See, my God, why have you forsaken me? This is not a cry of despair. I'm never going to deny the agony that Jesus experienced on the cross. I can't even begin to imagine. And that's why I have such a love-hate relationship with Easter, because I can't imagine. I can't imagine the pain that I personally caused him. And that breaks my heart, that I do that to him. So I'll never dismiss the agony, both the physical and the spiritual agony that Jesus went through on the cross, because it's overwhelming. But I know that this is not a cry of despair. There's a quote in your handout that I found as I was researching. It said, "No faithful Israelite dying with these words on their mouth could be thought that, or could have thought themselves, abandoned by God." No Israelite would ever cry these words thinking, God, you've abandoned me. Because they know that these are the beginning of redemption. That out of the darkness emerges the light. And so no one in that crowd that had ever been to church would have ever thought that Jesus was saying this, oh, woe is me. I'm in so much pain. This is terrible. This was, don't forget, light shines through the darkness. The sun will rise. The night is always darkest just before the sun rises. And so you've never seen a sunrise like what's about to come. That's what he's saying in that moment. In the midst of his terrible agony, he's still offering hope. See, this is a victory cry. He's saying, darkness will not win. Because the God of light rises, and the light will cast out the darkness. So Mark 15, 27 through 34 is more not forsaken. He didn't die in despair. Jesus lives in triumph. So when you feel despair, hopelessness, darkness like nobody understands, know that he gets it. He faced it. He conquered it, so you don't even have to. That's the hope we have. He won so that you don't have to face the darkness alone. He won so that I don't have to face the darkness alone. I know I'm not alone. Sometimes it feels that way, but I know he experienced it so I don't have to experience it. Because he's right by my side and saying, you got this. I'm here. Sometimes you don't feel me, but don't forget. I will always be here. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I don't want you to experience what I experienced. That's what sometimes we need to quiet all the other noise and listen to that still small voice. And sometimes it's really hard. Well, let's do that together. Let's remind each other of that victory cry that he lives. He lives in triumph so that we don't have to experience what he experienced. Heavenly Father, I thank you. I think you seem so small, so insignificant. I don't know what else to say, though. thank you. I love you. In your holy name. Amen. Let's stand.